Chapter 48:20. After listening to the thoughts in his heart and being amiable, he smiled and said, "Little friends must not laugh, there must be a return. If it is not returned to you, it is unfair." Jian Wushuang knew that this argument would be fruitless, and he only laughed. This sea area was originally vast and unknown, but everyone just played a few games in this lonely boat, and there were signs of reaching the end. After watching the appearance of the void sky at the extreme point of this sea, Jian Wushuang looked at the sympathetic old road and asked, "Old gentleman, take the liberty to ask, do you know where the Shanghuang sky is?" Shiqing Kai suddenly looked tight, and the slender palm suffocated the little animal in his arms. "It's over, it's completely exposed now, don't kill me," she cried in the bottom of her heart. The sympathetic old road immediately followed. "Upper Wasteland is not far away from here. You only need to cross more than 10 heavens along the next journey to go up to Wasteland." Jian Wushuang arched his hands, Mr. Xie Laro pointed. When Shiqing Kai was stunned, she couldn't believe it, but then she took a sigh of relief and became proud. "How about, I told you that it's coming soon, and you don't believe this?" Before she finished speaking, she was glared back by Yi Qing. "A game of chess is over, and the trip to the sea also ends soon." Jian Wushuang said goodbye, and then proceeded to the front with I Ching and Zikingqi. At the end of the sea, under the huge hibiscus tree, the sympathetic old man stood on the bow of the boat and watched him disappear. Lung Miandao also went out with him, fighting side by side with him. "The thing you asked him for, the luck attached to it was enough. I know, because I used a small method to borrow 200 years of luck from the little friend. If you think about it, you will have to pay him back twice. You old man, shut up for me, how can I still use you to teach?" Leaving from the Fusang waterway, Jian Wushuang followed the words of the genial old way, and after passing through more than 10 dead heavenly plains, he finally saw a dark red heavenly plain. This was the main battlefield between the emperor and the emperor. The unimaginable emperor's tendency is to burn the countless sky and the void, and countless souls perish. After Emperor Wuyang succeeded in annexing this place, he created a heavenly plane like purgatory to commemorate that war. And that plane of the heaven domain is also called Shanghuang by future generations. Such an iconic celestial field cannot be falsified and concealed, and this means that at most one more straight forward to the 100 celestial fields, it will arrive at the Dmitry sky where Gongzijiao is located. This time the confrontation is probably more violent than the previous northern celestial state. Whether the silver bell with the sky-shaped bone armor finally escaped to Domitian, this question is still a question mark for Jian Wushuang. With just one sentence of that heroic woman, he would be in danger, and it was really crazy. After a moment of contemplation, Jian Wushuang looked at the cleansing pool beside him, and said softly, "If there are another 100 celestial domains, you will reach Damien Tian, and your task has been completed." Shiqing Kai swallowed his throat. No, you have to throw me here." "It wouldn't be thrown here. I will send you to a more prosperous sky later, and we will pick you up when we are done." She heard the words, shook her head like a rattle, and then pursed her mouth. No, I have to follow you, even if it is dead, otherwise you will leave me alone in the heavens and ignore it. I can't go back. The place we are going to is very dangerous, and I have no time to care for you." Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. Shiqing Kai hurriedly shook his head. "You don't have to control me, just take me by my side, my family will protect me." Jian Wushuang wanted to say something more, and said in a clear way, "Take her, anyway, we are not responsible for life or death. You think about it." Jian Wushuang looked at her. Shiqing Kai nodded. "Relax, I won't add to your confusion." The cold and dead void as they went forward, began to have a lot of heaven on the way. But these heavens are similar to the little emperor's 6 heavens, and they have already shown a state of martial law. An emperor's son has fallen, which is a big event for the entire division, and the emperor Zhen Wuyang naturally cares the other 6 sons. It has been difficult to see Yang Xian in the void, and accordingly they should be more cautious, and they will not be found when they enter Dami. Nearly 100 vast expanse of heavens were thrown behind by Jian Wushuang, slowly showing in front of him. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to enter Domitian, dozens of killings suddenly burst from the dim void in front. He was instantly vigilant and wanted to quickly escape with the Qing and Shiqing ponds, but those killings came too quickly, but they ran into in a few breaths. However, Jian Wushuang's gaze also followed. In front of the dozens of piercing voids and carrying a heavy murderer, there is a shaky woman who seems to be likely to die at any time. And the woman, he was very familiar, was one of the 7 swordsmen who assassinated the Sun Mo, and finally told him the heroic woman who came to Dami Tian. Right now, this killing in the void is nearing its end. Facing the battle of nearly 10 Yangxian and more than 20 ancestors, how could she escape? Your son has orders, as long as you die, you can do it. Yang Xian, headed by an angry drink, shook his arms at the same time, releasing thousands of ways of Yang Li Huamang, and was about to hang it in place. The void is illuminated by Yang Li, and all kinds of Yang Li are like incapable cages, pressing down on her. The heroic woman's blood was in her mouth. At this last moment, she also stopped escaping, and stood staring at those Yangxian coldly. At the next moment, there was almost no suspense in the situation, but a drastic change occurred. I saw a figure coming out of the air, faced with the intertwining of countless horrors. He looked calm and raised his hand. Suddenly, the void shattered, and countless dark ink-like floods rushed out of the void, directly swallowing the entanglement of those intertwined landings. There are 7 tiny stars surging between his eyebrows, exuding an attractive trend. Once the stars appeared, it was a fairy. Only by mastering the immortal style can we directly crush Yangxian in the same realm. The fairy style of Jian Wushuang is called a little mountain. Between the mountains and rivers, everything is used by him, to destroy all enemies. Faced with so many Yangxian and Dingxiu, he was not afraid and easily swallowed their Yanli moves. Then, he looked at the bruised British woman covered with scars. The eyes are opposite, her eyes are full of disbelief. She did not expect that he would come so fast, so fast. Chapter 48:21. At the next moment, Jian Wushuang raised his palm, and countless strands of Yanli Huamang shot terribly to a few points, forming a vast net, blocking her head. The gang wind raged, and several Yangxian had no time to dodge. They were directly twisted into a sieve, and the immortals were scattered. It was only in such a face-to-face that the team from the chase was instantly wiped out of 4 Yangxian and over 10 ancestors. All the remaining Yangxian were shocked by the fierce tactics, his eyes were panic, and the meaning of retreat came out. But instead of retreating, they stood still and stalemate with Jian Wushuang. Because behind them is the Dami Heaven realm, which can be advanced and retreated, and the death order given by the master has not been completed, and it is absolutely impossible to go back. Thinking of this, a middle-aged Yangxian tooth-headed close bite and said in a deep voice, "Visitors in front, here is the big Mitian, but the second realm under the emperor, I wait for the emperor to kill the remaining evil, and hope not to block." Jian Wushuang removed his gaze from her and looked at those Yangxian Dingxiu. It's the best policy not to conflict with the entire Dmitri and the sun, but everything that is going on suddenly makes things tricky. Killing several Yangxian first, it has already shown that it is impossible to want a hospice. Jian Wushuang did not speak, but looked at Yi Qing slightly and nodded. Di Qing also nodded and took a step forward slowly, as if the power of night was about to sweep forward. He just slowly lifted a palm up, gripping it across the air, and suddenly the void shattered. A clear vein, covered with heavy black scales, covered the heavy palm and pressed down. All Yangxian and Dingxiu are about to split. Even if it is too late to run Yanli, they are all under that palm and all die. He used 1 enemy and 2 to play the essence of Da Yangxian in the same realm. The control of Yang Li has reached the top. His blow is like a cloud cover, but he has not attracted any agitation of violent Yang Li, directly and simply squeeze the fairy source of Yangxian. Then Qingqing withdrew his palms and returned to Jian Wushuang. Only the wind raged in the hazy void, and everything just seemed not to have happened. The heroic woman unconsciously stepped back and looked at Jian Wushuang and others with horrified eyes. After dispersing Yang Li, Jian Wushuang quickly walked to her, and said softly, "I haven't seen you for a long time." Slightly calming down the mood to escape from the dead, she said, How come you come so fast?" "Because I believe you didn't lie to me, I came," he said. "It seems that I came at the right time." Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, the heroic woman looked at him and said, "Thank you for your life-saving grace, I will return it in the future." "No need, you died in front of me, it's not good for me, there is a reason to save you. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, now, we are about to enter the sky. There was some consternation in her eyes, and then she gritted her teeth. Are you going to assassinate the sun? Jian Wushuang shook his head. He and I have no grievances, why should I kill him? I entered Damitien to find the silver bell and get something back. The heroic girl exhaled slowly, and then said, I'm afraid that today's silver bell, you want to be close to her, is not an easy task. Now she is under the seat of the sun. It seems that she really fled to this big sky. He frowned slightly. She said again, now she and her son are still close to each other. If you want to be close to her, you can only approach him. Jian Wushuang nodded, already thinking about the countermeasures. Is there any safest way to enter the sky? The northern celestial state is destroyed, and the son of the sun is killed. I think the other 6 emperors will be banned to varying degrees. At this point in time, I am afraid that it is not easy to enter the Dmitry. Ingchi women said, the entire Dmitry, the dozens of heavens contained in it, are already under martial law. Jian Wushuang frowned. Is there no secure route? After she pondered for a while, she said, naturally, but I'm afraid you won't dabble easily. Where? North Heavenly Territory, Baron Gu Lingtai. Among the 7 emperors under Zhen Wuyang, the domain controlled by the second emperor is the most vast and vast. The entire Damitien contains a total of 23 super-celestial realms, and the vast expanse can't be added, even the 6th celestial realm of the little emperor's son can't be compared with it. There are 4 heaven gates from east to west, north and south, all of which can be accessed through the heaven gate, and they can be corrected by the court. It is said that there are 4 heavenly gates, but in fact there are only 3, and the other north heaven gate, that is, in the northern heaven, is completely silent. The entire North Heaven territory is completely composed of tombs, and those silent and unknown tombs are left behind by the true Wuyang era, and are all the supreme powers that had been killed in battle. Although their immortal sources are scattered, the immortal bones still have terrible energy, and ordinary Yangxian can't set foot in it. Naturally, the North Celestial Domain does not have Yangxian stationed. These are all learned from the heroic woman's mouth. After learning of this news, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate, and went to Baitianyu with I Ching and Ziqingqi. Demission's northern sky is in the extreme north, and the breath of death is extremely enough to infiltrate the void for most of it. There is no Yangxian and Dingxiu to come to this place. Here it is, north sky is ahead. In the boundless void, the heroic woman stood on her feet and looked forward. It was a dark field that was invisible to one side. I don't know how many years have passed, and the powers of those once supreme powers have all become master powers, wreaking havoc in the void. Only from here to enter the big Mitien will not be discovered by the sun and the guards, but do not think that this is the safest and most secure place. In some ways, this is likely to be the most dangerous place. Such as, for example, my identity is not enough. I don't know anything about the things in this northern sky. I only know the dangers. I can't easily get involved. Jian Wushuang pressed his chin, thinking and saying, no, I think you should be quite tall in this big sky in your identity, otherwise the sun will not let you perform the assassination mission. The heroic woman glared at him. Hutty, if you go on, don't be afraid that I will get angry and tell your son to correct it. Jian Wushuang smiled and calmly said, if he really wants you to live, the previous scene will not happen. You have to know, who wants you to die most now? The heroic girl fell silent, and immediately raised her head and said, come on, as long as I am not dead, I will take you into the heavens. Okay, I'll thank you here. Jian Wushuang lowered her eyes and nodded. Chapter 48:22. Immediately afterwards, he seemed to remember something, and asked, yes, I'm a little curious. What did Yinling take away from you before? The golden seal given to me by the sun, after she snatched it, used it as a way to open the way to demission. Jian Wushuang nodded. If she really said that, Yinling would probably have not left them since the North Celestial State was destroyed, but has been trailing and hiding in the dark, waiting for a certain time. But what makes Jian Wushuang unsure is why Yinling can guess that the heroic girl was sent by Dmitry, and then will take away the gold seal and come straight to Dmitry. By the way, Did the group of Yangxian who previously sold black mountain crystals in northern Jiangxianzhou have anything to do with you? The heroic girl said coldly, I have nothing to say about everything that happened before. Jian Wushuang said again, also, what should I call it? Zhao Ting. Set foot in the northern sky, an ancient barren breath will come, and at the same time there is some kind of invisible force that is faintly pulling and dragging, traction and engulfing the whole body. The tombs like the Shunfeng peaks stretched silently, reaching the invisible distance. Rather than saying that these fairy tombs were built in Baitianu, it is better to say that Baitianu is composed entirely of fairy tombs. Because these ancient tombs are extremely dense, it is almost impossible to have a foothold, so Jian Wushuang and others flew at low altitudes in the northern sky, and moved forward slowly. Although the owner of each fairy tomb has died, the former dynamism and the general trend still remain. Although it is irreversible, it is still powerful. Moreover, the lowest power in these fairy tombs is Yangxian, and the existence of Dianxian is not rare. No one spoke. Everyone raised the strength to the peak, and had already dealt with everything that might happen next. Shiqing Kai was right next to Jian Wushuang, not knowing whether it was intentional or unintentional, he squeezed the heroic woman named Zhao Ting apart. The little beast held in her arms seemed extremely excited, and seemed to be very interested in the breath of these fairy tombs, and he kept shaking his nose. Sanqing, you can be honest with me, and then I will throw you down. Shiqing Kai threatened in a low voice. The little beast converged slightly, but still agitated in her arms. Jian Wushuang glanced at the little animal in her arms and asked, what's the use of this little animal? Zikingqi nodded. Sanqing was picked up in the mountains when I was a child. It is a dream taper, which can swallow bad nightmares and dispel bad luck, so I have always carried it on my body, there will be good luck. Jian Wushuang nodded and continued to fly forward. The entire northern celestial field can be regarded as the larger celestial field in the Dami sky, and it takes a short time to cross. And the danger in Zhao Ting's mouth should be the disorderly force surging on the fairy tomb. As he continued to move forward, the dream taper in Zikingqi's arms became more restless, and there was only excitement left in his clear eyes. At the next moment, the little beast suddenly rushed out of Shiqing Kai's arms, and the swift and fierce head like a swimming fish plunged into the fairy tomb community below. Sanqing. Shiqing Kai was startled. Jian Wushuang also peeked into this abnormal scene. He waved his arm and Yanli Huamang shot away. Thousands of strands of Yanli Huamang are like a knot, and the dream taper suddenly turned back. When he opened his mouth, he directly swallowed that Yanli Huamang into his belly, and then stuck his head in the fairy tomb community. Jian Wushuang's brows were slightly frowned, and there was a bad hunch in his heart. The dream taper that fell in the fairy tomb group tweeted, and then raised its 4 claws, and ran through it quickly. The dynamism that had been extremely chaotic to the extreme raged directly, and the entire northern sky was instantly ignited. Damn something, I'm going to peel it alive. Di Qing was furious and lifted his palm to release Yang Li No. Jian Wushuang's deep voice stopped him from about to let go. Can't do it, the breath here is not right. It seems that to confirm his words, the masterless forces in the entire northern sky are completely disordered and violent. As the initiator, the dream taper was running, and his mouth swallowed some unknown breath. Its snow-white body began to produce dense black lines, and the original figure of the arm's length also rose more than 10 feet in response to the storm. It's swallowing. Although those looking to the ancient power have fallen asleep, and the source of the fairy has been broken, but their charm is not so easy to dissipate, it will only dissipate in the extremely long years, and finally return to the heaven. Right now, the dream taper is engulfing the lordless way to strengthen itself. Zhao Ting was also horrified that such a turmoil occurred in the otherwise quiet North Qianyu, and Gongzi Jiao will inevitably realize that once they are discovered, they will never be able to escape. Hurry on, I'm afraid the sun will know the turmoil here soon. Zhao Ting hurriedly urged. I'm going to get Sanqing back. Zikingqi has been startled by the 6 gods. Jian Wushuang frowned, looking at the dream taper who was still swallowing his soul. Almost at the same time, the state of Demission and Zhongzhou. Located in Sendai, above the sky, A lazy figure in a long white-toothed dress quietly opened its eyes and then looked north. He was the second emperor of Zhenwuyang's seat, and the sun was correct. Soon, with several powerful shadows, she boarded Sendai. His Royal Highness, there will be restlessness in the direction of Baitianu, I am afraid. I'm afraid what? The dead can't survive anymore? The younger son even raised his eyelids. You don't have to report the matter in the north sky, please leave it. The shadows promised and then retreated. Right, pass Yinling, I want to see her. A palm fell down, and the unmatched force almost bound the dream taper, but still let it escape. Jian Wushuang also apparently lost some patience and began to prepare to kill him. Meng Tapi is greedy, and his belly seems to be a bottomless hole, even if he is escaping his life. With the swallowing, its shape has undergone tremendous changes. Especially its eyes, under the original eyes, 2 slits were split, and a pair of eyes grew out of nowhere, which seemed extremely strange. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing joined forces to strangle, and the overwhelming force offensive also gradually forced it into a dead end. But at this moment, the change was abrupt, and the dreaming taper who was running away seemed to hit a layer of transparent enchantment head-on, and his body was cruel, and then he wailed and fell on the floor. Chapter 48-23. At the same time, the ground was collapsing and a series of ravines began to crack. Jian Wushuang and others in the chase also stopped their bodies and looked forward. Among the countless fairy tombs, the one in the center of the eyes is several times larger than the ordinary fairy tombs, as if several peaks are stacked together, revealing unpredictable oppression. The dream taper was planted in front of this fairy tomb. At this moment, along with the collapse of the ground, the fairy tomb also began to crack, apparently about to collapse. Go! Zhao Ting was already extremely nervous. Looking at this unpredictable scene, Jian Wushuang did not want to be suspected, even if he had to escape. I'm afraid I can't go away. Di Qingsheng sighed, and then looked behind him. I saw the originally silent fairy tombs cracked one after another, and a fairy bone with no consciousness came out of the tomb, and the unsteady soaring to the void blocked the way of several of them. How is it possible? Looking at this scene, Jian Wushuang was a little unbelievable. The owners of these immortal bones have long since died many years ago, and can no longer die. Both from the immortal source and the immortal body, they have dissipated and do not have the conditions for recovery. Even if they were guarding the heavenly court of Emperor Liu Yao, the fairy bones of the 3 Dianxian were also allowed to continue to guard because of a certain obsession. But right now, these fairy bones, who are still in the fairy tomb, are all recovering, and they are surrounded by layers, never less than thousands. Only killed. Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice, and an invisible long sword had condensed in his hands. Di Qing was also ready to respond, and a pair of golden eyes began to surge. With a sigh, Zhao Ting drew a slender straight knife from his waist to prepare for the response. More and more fairy bones crawled out of the fairy tomb. They were unconscious but all came together. Jian Wushuang no longer hesitated, a sword slashed out, the unmatched sword burst into the immortal bone. Jenny pushed flatly and emptied a large area in an instant. There is no fairy source at all, and fairy bones without consciousness can easily cause damage. Infinite quantity. Di Qing also drank with a deep voice, and a black ebony phase emerged from his back, and then faced up against the mountain-like fairy bones. The North Celestial Territory was trembling, countless fairy tombs were damaged, and the fairy bones fell into the ground like rain. However, this is just the beginning. The largest immortal tomb in the center was finally broken. At the same time, thousands of treasures emerged from the tomb and stirred the sky dome. A figure as high as several feet, wearing a rotten robe, walked out of the fairy tomb. There was a whisk behind his back, and a thin sword in the palm of his thin, black hand held a real sword. His cheeks are his ruined and pale skin can see the bones inside. His eyes were shriveled and equally gray, without any breath. Various signs indicate that this old way of carrying the dust and holding the true sword of Baoguang has already disappeared. A type of ancestral art power Tianmen cleared hundreds of immortal bones in front of him. Jian Wushuang looked dignified at the figure coming out of the immortal tomb. The old figure gave him an extremely dangerous atmosphere. He could naturally detect the dead air that flowed around the old figure, but the more so, the more vigilant he must be. Once obsessed, even if you become a bone, it is quite terrible, and this old way of knowing how many years the body disappeared is definitely several times stronger than the guardian bone in front of the 6 Raven Emperor's heavenly court. Di Qing's eyes were also dignified, because he also sensed a dangerous breath. The northern chaos, which was originally chaotic as the battlefield, suddenly died for a moment, and everyone looked at the front. The old man who carried the dust and took the Baoguang true sword took a step forward, and then reached out to remove the dust behind. The voice of the old man followed. I walked out of Huang Quan, perturbed the banner and summoned the old ministry to wipe out all the enemies in front of me, he said, waving his hands to whisk the dust, and the whole North Heavenly Territory became turbulent again. Flicking dust seems to have a magic sound, swaying to every fairy tomb. At this moment, the originally crushed and crushed fairy bone slowly creeped and recondensed, and at the same time, thousands of fairy tombs cracked, and a fairy bone came out. There are 5,000 immortal bones, and 5,000 immortal bones that belonged to Yangxian during their lifetime. Even if they were dead, they still carried an unparalleled trend. Laro Dao holds the real dust sword, and his shriveled and pale eyes are gradually filled with scarlet. Jian Feng pointed out that my old part will be suppress. He pointed his sword forward, and the sharp blade pointed at Jian Wushuang and others. In an instant, the immortal bones, which were originally unconscious, seemed to get some kind of induction, all like floods, surrounded from all sides. Jian Wushuang led the sword and used it directly, the first form of Xinggehu Haijianyi, Xing Jianyi cut straight forward, with an incomparable trend of violently tearing the fairy bones, and at the same time, Jianyi Mang pillar broke out completely, almost emptying one side in an instant. Di Qing is also not weak at all. It belongs to the strength of Zhu Zhuan Dian Immortal. On the collision of the immortal bones, it is almost as easy as dying. His strength has reached the apex. The two joined forces, and all the fairy bones could not step forward, let alone close. Seeing this scene from afar, the scarlet eyes moved slightly, and he waved again. With the waving of the dust, countless broken fairy bones began to recoagulate. They are mixed together, and gradually condense a party of thousands of miles of fairy bone. The phalanx is so powerful that it has already taken shape and wrapped the swordsman and others in it. Countless masterless forces, violent and disordered, rose from the fairy bone formation, as if they were huge white bone palms, constantly pulling them. Jian Wushuang's heart was in crisis, and he didn't want to cut a sword above the magic circle under him. However, without any unfavorable sword intent, is like a mud ball entering the sea, silently. The swallowed fairy bones are more and more, and the fairy bone array becomes stronger and stronger. At the same time, the old man holding the real dust and Baoguang real sword appeared in front of the magic circle, and then he held up the real sword with enthusiasm in his hand and suddenly stabbed into the magic circle. This sword went straight to the beginning of Qing. His golden eyes were dignified, and then he shot to resist. Buzz! A Hong Zhongdalu-like Shen Shengche was thorough, taking a serious step back, and at the same time Jian Wushuang also shot, he relayed, and the invisible real sword was cut in the palm, in order to resolve that terrible sore. The two swords are opposed to each other, and half of the sword intention has been offset by I Ching, and then they are rejected by Jian Wushuang. The fairy bones fell silent. Retreating to the right palm of Qing slightly trembling, I saw that between the right palm he resisted, it was already bloody. Chapter 48-24. The prosperity of the old sword actually hurt him. You have to know that Diqing is already Zhu Zhuan Dian Immortal and is at the top of the list. Even Dayangxian in the same realm can hardly hurt him. But in this face-to-face, the old saying that he walked out of Huang Quan was just a light sword, hurting him. Not only is it Qing, after Jian Wushuang dismissed that sword, the inscrutable sword intention also made his body blood and tumbling. This understatement of the sword made them suffer to varying degrees. Then Huang Quan's old road did not stop at all, and the Baoguang true sword stabbed again in the hand. Chengqi, Shen Qingsheng said the idea, and an uncoverable Chongxiao Damang surged from behind him. A pure white Baiwu condensed, a pupil as holy as a snow lotus had a charm, and then resolutely hit the old Huangquan road. Seemingly feeling threatened, he took a step back and swiped the dust with his left hand. In an instant, hundreds of millions of strands of white silk fluttering like strips of long snakes, facing the white Wubao. When the two collided, the white Wubaoxiang hadn't even had time to release its momentum yet, and it was entangled by hundreds of thousands of strands of white silk. Jian Wushuang's brow furrowed, and he turned to look at the pale Zhao Ting and Shi Qingkai beside him. After a while, I will try my best to tear this circle apart, and you will have as far as you can go. Zhao Ting looked at him and opened his mouth but said nothing. Shi Qingkai's eyes were reddish, and Nuo said, sorry, I'm wrong. I can do it myself. Jian Wushuang finally looked at her, carrying the invisible long sword, and resolutely moved forward. Di Qing looked solemn and said in a deep voice, although this old Dao has already died, but the energy contained in his body is extremely abundant, I am afraid that his fairy source has not been consumed. Jian Wushuang looked at the front with dignified eyes. If the judgment is correct, then Huangquan Laro Dao is very likely to be the peak of 9-turn Da Yangxian, which is in the same situation as Di Qing. And Huangquan's old ways are far from being a single fight. More and more fairy bones tear the fairy tomb and walk out of the fairy tomb. Let him dispatch the messenger. This entered the first battle of Dami Tian. I am afraid it is quite tricky. After Di Qing's blow was offset by the white dust from the dust, Huangquan's Dao no longer fought, but retreated quickly, waving the dust in his hand. The dust seemed to have some kind of enchanting magic sound, and those fairy bones flew over from all directions again. Don't let these things near me, I went to pick up the old head. Di Qing said looking at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, releasing the unmatched force directly in his palm. Each strand was enough to crush a fairy bone. Yi Qing's body shape no longer stayed, and suddenly a pair of wings with gold lines around him loomed over the sky. Facing the old saying of Huangquan, he no longer released the treasure, but shook the wings behind him. In an instant, countless, like the mountains and seas, the dynamism will burst out completely. There are hundreds of millions of golden feathers, with an unimaginable breadth. The heavens and the punishment are generally falling. Every golden feather is destroyed, the dead air on the sky is swallowed, and a shocking big hole is burned, and everything is illuminated. This is the full-strength form of ditching, an unreserved form. Boom! Master Huangquan raised his head and looked at the sky-destroyed Jinyu, waving the dust in his hand. Fu Chen Bai Sai stretched for thousands of miles in an instant, and turned into a party to protect himself. At this moment, the earth was torn, and countless immortal bones were burned up by the falling golden feathers, and they burned up together with the earth. The dust-bound enchantment built by Huangquan's masters, even though it was sturdy again, was still unable to contend with the golden feather that carried the mountain sea trend. After the dust enchantment was torn open, the sky-like golden feathers were like locusts, and they rushed to Huangquan's old road. The indescribable martyrdom centered on him, tearing the north heavenly domain directly from the middle, and the plain will be torn apart. The energy dissipated by this kind of escape cannot be sustained under Yangxian. Jian Wushuang reached out to protect the Qingting pool Zhao Ting behind them, and then prepared to break the formation under him. At the next moment, the old man resounded like Hong Zhongdalu's voice. Set. He held the invisible sword and prepared to push it horizontally. He only felt that his body was blessed with some kind of shackles, and he even directly interrupted his control of Yanli. Even Qing Qing above the void was affected, and his figure trembled, and he landed uncontrollably. The world is silent, only the burning fire spread. Whispering white silk enchantment retreats, revealing Huangquan's old figure. At this time, he was not embarrassed, his grey skin was burned into large holes, revealing the horrible bones, and one of the two eyeballs also burst, even more terrible. Thief, dare to insult me? He was furious, and his rotten robe, even with the dust in his hands, turned to ashes. Today, I will ask you to turn into nourishment in my Huangquan fatty an array. The deafening voice stopped, and Huangquan's old right hand held the sword, turning into a sensational bone in his left hand. Immediately, the large array of immortal bones trapped by Wushuang Jian, Di Qing, and others slowly rotated. Uncountable broken fairy bones rise and fall in it, with fierce extreme murderousness and death energy. These countless Yangxian powers that once fought in the quartet and died here, even the dead bones after death, have been refined and become the nourishment of the great array. This is a fierce battle. Along with Huang Quan's old ways, this Huang Quan Fatian array began to fluctuate and became like a quagmire. The feet began to become muddy, and at the same time a pair of white bones palms protruded, madly grasping at Jiajian Wushuang and others. There was also a strong blood of God, and it immediately rushed up. "We are all nourishment," commemorates the souls of my dead subordinates. Huang Quan's old voice chanted lowly, accompanied by his voice. The blood of the entire Huang Quan Fatian array completely wiped the sword Wushuang and others. Swallowed, then boiled. There are still immortal bones coming out of the immortal tomb, and they rushed towards the magic circle without turning back, and merged into it, becoming a part and a strong formation. The boiling and viscous blood of God is like a tianhe falling from the sky dome, ugly and ugly. Huang Quan Laro Dao looked at this scene with only one eye left. He seemed very satisfied, and then moved forward. At the next moment, the blood river in Huang Quan Fa Tianjin trembles suddenly, and then a figure emerges quietly. He wasn't soaked with bloodstains all over his body. Jiao Qing held up an invisible long sword in his hand, drawing bows and arrows like shooting the sun, and his arm's tension was rounded to the extreme. At the next moment, the invisible long sword was suddenly thrown out, as if the arrows shot by the god's bow were anxious, with a forward-looking trend. The sky trembles, wherever the sword front passes, the void is broken. Chapter 48-25. The blood river was divided into two sections, and the invisible sword finally pierced the boundary of the Huang Quan Fatian array, and nailed into the heart of Huang Quan's old road, bursting. The unparalleled glare shines, illuminating the decayed northern sky for a moment. The martyrdom continued, and Huang Quan Fatian array was punctured, and collapsed at a very fast rate. Standing above the blood river that is about to wither, Jian Wushuang slowly spit out a cloud of breath, and a secret red light flashed away in his left hand. It is the fairy bones and the blood river that build the Huang Quan Fatian array. The blood river is formed by the condensing murderous and dead air, which can easily infiltrate the soul of the gods and cause the siege to be lost. But there was one thing that made Jian Wushuang and others easily evade the blood swallowing. That thing, Sho Qing, the lord of Sand Devil's Cave, was handed to Jian Wushuang's slap blood-red skull when he was dying. The blood-red skull's absorption and induction of blood gas has exceeded imagination. Even if he was sealed in the Bolyang bottle, he still flew out of control, and the whale swallowed the infinite murderous blood and blood gas in the blood river. This is something that Jian Wushuang didn't think of. The originally very difficult Huang Quan Fa Tian array was also depleted of its foundation, so it was easily destroyed. Replug the skull into the Bolyang bottle. Jian Wushuang's eyes looked forward. Standing in front of him, Qing Qing looked at him with shocking eyes, destroyed the magic circle with his own strength, and directly killed the old Dao of Huang Quan, who was a big Yangxian. How could it not surprise him? A small realm is an insurmountable gap, let alone a gap between Yangxian and Dianxian. But that's how it happened. Jian Wushuang used the power of Yangxian to kill Dianxian by leapfrog. It seems that my cognition is still just the tip of the iceberg for you. Di Qing looked at him and sighed slightly. Jian Wushuang couldn't explain too much, just said, "It's just a coincidence." Shi Qing Kai is completely a shocked look. Zhao Ting looked at his back in a complicated way, and did not know what to think about. The thick smoke waves from the martyrdom slowly dissipated, and then a body with almost no human form appeared. Under the blow of Jian Wushuang, the entire left half of the fairy body of Huang Quan Laro Dao was completely destroyed. In his shriveled chest cavity, there really is a group of immortal sources that will be destroyed. He did not die, although the fairy source is about to break, but still provides him with unimaginable dynamism. Huang Quan was angry, and used his last power to throw the Baoguang True sword out of his hand. With a real sword of endless dark blood, cut it at a speed so fast that it can't dodge at all. Heaven and earth changed their colors, everything was in a blink of an eye, and even Qing Qing did not react. Jian Wushuang saw the most real thing. When the real sword broke through the clouds, he almost subconsciously pushed away his face. Laugh. The Baoguang Tru sword with infinite blood and murderousness accidentally stabbed into the left chest of Jian Wushuang, and came out through the chest, and the tearing blood spewed out. "Adult!" shouted Shi Qingkai. Di Qing was also completely shocked, but he reacted in an instant and directly released the most terrifying trend in front of Huang Quan. A total of 3 black, white, and red Trinity ancestral treasures, all of which represent Yi Qing's full blow, rolling forward. Huang Quan, who had broken Xianyuan, was finally extinct under this blow. He completely died, even with the entire northern sky territories dead, countless of the fairy bones that came out of the fairy tomb, no traction, so they fell to the ground one after another. The entire North Sky territory was completely dead. Jian Wushuang slowly leaned back and was dragged by both Shi Qingkai and Zhao Ting at the same time. The blood of God with a faint gold streak was flowing from the back of his heart, and his pupils slowly enlarged. "It will be okay, it will be okay," the cleaning pool murmured, the blood flowing out of her fingers. Huang Qing, who had already destroyed Huang Quan's old ways, quickly looked at Jian Wushuang with dignified eyes, and then pressed his palms against his broken chest. With a ray of vigorous strength, he tried to repair his chest. Jian Wushuang Kuei suddenly opened his eyes and said slowly, "Leave this place as soon as possible and rush to the territory of Demission." After leaving this sentence, he passed out again. Noble nodded, grabbed Jian Wushuang directly from the second female, and ran straight to the North Sky. Zhao Ting and Shi Qingpo followed immediately. After entering the northern heavenly field full of immortal tombs, it was considered to have entered the hinterland of Demission. The originally hazy sky dome disappeared, replaced by a bright and vigorous sky. That fierce battle almost smashed the entire Baitianu, and finally attracted nearly 100 guards to go to Baitianu to investigate. Passing by the guards of Yangxian and Dingxiu, the face is dignified. Jian Wushuang is now seriously injured, and he must find a secluded cave to recuperate, so as not to leave an indelible dark disease. Immediately afterwards, Diqing was nearby, looking for a hole in the sky that was relatively thin and hard to detect, so he swept away. The clouds gradually thinned out, and a total of 7 fairy peaks like fairy mountains came into view. Holding the essence of Jian Wushuang, he directly selected the largest and magnificent immortal mountain among the 7 lotus peaks and arrived. Boom! He waved his palm directly and opened a small hole in the side of the lotus peak. Several people turned around and entered it. Holding the head of Jian Wushuang, Qingshou took the brunt and entered the small cave, but soon he was stunned. Zhao Ting and Shi Qingpond also stopped on the spot. I saw directly in front of them, in the depths of this small hole, a young man in a shabby gown was scared to sit on the ground with his legs crossed, and Yu was reading at www.ukanshu.com looking at them in horror. Beside this young man, some precious treasures were scattered, apparently just scattered. Di Qing soon understood what was going on. It turned out that this lotus peak was not an unowned thing, and it was obviously a blessed place for this young man to practice. But even if this lotus peak is the possession, but hit him to enter here is to change the Lord. In the eyes of Di Qing, a secret flash of murderous opportunity emerged, killing a guy who was nothing but a fairyland. For him, it was simply no easier. Just as he was about to start, Jian Wushuang, who had been comatose, opened his eyes quietly, and he said, "He can't kill." Although he didn't understand it, Di Qing still restrained the killing in his heart, and looked at the disappointed young man with a deep voice, "Get out of time, and get out." After hearing this sentence, a young man with a grey face, like amnesty, "No matter how busy this is," he nodded, and at the same time quickly picked up some of the top treasures that fell on the ground to escape. Chapter 48-26. Throwing those treasures into his arms with all his hands and feet, the young man would rush out of the sky. But immediately, Zikingqi did open his arms to stop his way. "You can't let him go, otherwise the safety of the adults can't be guaranteed." The young man heard the words and closed his eyes in a hurry. "You can rest assured that I haven't seen anything, and nothing will be passed on." Di Qing also realized something, directly released the Yang Li rope to hug him, and thrown it into the depths of this small hole. The young man, who fell heavily on the ground, like a frightened rabbit, spoke in a panic. My lords, Imwei Liujia is a good person. I am diligent in this big lonely mountain. I haven't even fallen down once every Chinese New Year. God can clearly understand my sincerity. I am loyal to the second Emperor Wu. Too lazy to listen to his nonsense, Di Qing blocked his mouth again, and used the force to transform the whip, and slashed him to count the whip, only to be honest. Suddenly it was silent for a few days, and Qing Qing placed the unconscious sword Wushuang on a flat ground before he began to investigate his condition. Under this view, even Qing Qing was a little surprised. Jian Wushuang's original fragmented body, and even the internal organs were almost empty of the fairy body. At this moment, it has been restored. The shocking wound is also visible to the naked eye. The speed is repairing. Moreover, his breath has gradually stabilized from the previous fluctuations, and a complete recovery is only a matter of time. What a freak, this guy. Di Qing murmured in disbelief. The cleaning pond also came forward at this time, and his eyes were still slightly reddish. Adult situation. He's fine, and it doesn't matter for a while. Di said coldly. He was obviously more disgusted with this almost culprit woman. Then can I take care of adults, she whispered. No. Di Qing responded coldly. He doesn't have to take care of him, he will recover soon. The cleaning pool is promised and the lost return. As time went by, the cave in the fairy mountain fell silent within a day. I don't know how long it passed, a slight cry, a little excitement sounded from far and near outside the cave. Suddenly, a figure with more than enough size suddenly ran into the sky, and the snow-white hair was dotted with incomprehensible dark dense lines. It was a dream taper in Shiqing Pond, and it was also the culprit that awakened all the fairy bones in the fairy tombs of the northern heaven. At the moment, he jumped into the sky, and his 4 dark eyes directly saw its owner, and he was thrilled when he was excited. But it was a powerful foot in response to it. Almost 10% of the effort was used to clean the pool and kick it out with 1 foot. At the same time, while Zhao Ting hadn't responded, he directly withdrew the saber from her waist and cut it towards Meng Tapi. But in the end, the long knife that circulated Yanli did not fall, but hovered over Meng Tapio's head. Shiqing Kai's eyes turned red, watching it coldly. Get out, I will no longer be your master from now on. Meng Tap whispered in a low voice, and her front paws swayed unsteadily on the ground. It didn't understand why his master suddenly became so cold. It whimpered, and went forward on its lower body, only this time, it was a sharp long knife that responded to it. Cut it with a knife, and tore a wound directly on Meng Tap's neck. Go. Shi Qingkai said coldly, his long knife pointing out of the sky. Meng Tapi whimpered, lying motionless. At this time, a tired voice slowly sounded, forget it, the things that have passed are gone, and the wisdom of a small animal is not yet civilized, and it is also reasonable. Jian Wushuang sat up slowly and coughed again. Sir, you're awake. Shiqing Kai was surprised, and his long knife stood on the ground, and he was a little embarrassed. It's not good to sleep again. He shook his head helplessly. Yi Qing, who had been sitting next to him, gave him a careful look, then raised his eyebrows slightly. It's still pretty good. Jian Wushuang smiled. Fortunately, I didn't hurt the source, and the recovery was smooth. After he finished speaking, he looked around slowly. Are we here now? Yi Qing replied, among the vastness of the hinterland, the northern heaven has already left. It seems to be quite smooth. This small hole is pretty good. Although the strength is thinner, it is also a good go-to dojo. Jian Wushuang looked around and nodded. This small cave has hidden winds and condensed water in the day, and although the layout is a bit cold, it is still elegant, and its owner is obviously stylish. As he was about to take his gaze back, Yu Guang suddenly glanced at the corner of the wall and there was a figure almost with Zongzi. And the dumplings stared at them, looking at them in horror. This is... Jian Wushuang was puzzled. When Qingwen heard the words, he held out his hand, and the figure wrapped in dumplings rolled over, and at the same time removed the Yanlian chain from his mouth. Seeing this, the sullen young man hurriedly closed his eyes and said something in his mouth. I didn't see anything, and I didn't know how many people were there. I beg your adults to put it down. Jian Wushuang couldn't help crying and laughing. Nothing, open my eyes and let me see. The young man heard the words and finally opened his eyes slowly. "Are you the master of this hole?" he asked. The young man nodded. "Ukanshu." Com's voice trembled a little. "Below is the second mountain owner of this big lonely mountain, Wei Liujia." "Wei Liujia? Good name." Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile, and said, "How many mountain owners like you are in this vast sky?" This rogue young man named Wei Liujia, like the pour of beans, spoke of the old bottom. "There are dozens of heavens in the entire Damian heaven, but there are only 17 caves like Xianshan cave like me, and only there are 17 mountain owners, and the mountain owners are hereditary. They cannot be led by others." Jian Wushuang touched his chin. 17 caves and 17 mountain owners. It seems that your identity is relatively high in this vast sky, right? Wei Liujia heard the words and flashed a look of embarrassment. "The identity of Lord Dong Tianshan is certainly high, but my father died at a young age, and only left me the seat of this big Gushan mountain. Speaking of the Lord of the Cave of Heaven, in fact, the entire Dagushan cave is just a polished pole for me, plus every Chinese New Year is to be worshipped, and my father has never left a little treasure. Below, I became the bottom of the 17 caves, not to be seen by any monks." Chapter 48-27. There was an awkward atmosphere in the cave of Dagu Mountain. Jian Wushuang once again looked at this simple cave. Except for a few dilapidated futons that were almost patched, all other feng shui scenes were purely natural. Only then did he confirm that he was not lying, and it was really poor. "No, are you as poor as a Yangxian?" Jian Wushuang made an unconscious attempt. Wei Liujia was very injured, and the expression on his face was almost embarrassed. "That, because I am just a little Yangxian, and I have no great ability to gather money, I can only live by this big lonely mountain." Such a twist. Plus the order of the emperor, the mountain owners should not leave their respective jurisdictions without authorization, so they are so poor. "I used to ask other Yangxian to ask for some treasures of precious treasures, and I plan to plant some seeds for the coming of the Chinese New Year. If you don't live, you can only grow some mortals, so after 1 or 2 visits, it becomes the situation you see." Speaking of this, Wei Liujia raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang nervously. "Several adults, you all also see that Wei Mao is really poor. Even if he bears his clothes, he can't squeeze a little treasure, and he also invites the adults to open the net." Jian Wushuang was also understandable at this time. The young Yangxian named Wei Liujia now inherited his father's title and got the title of the mountain owner. But because of his bad luck and various other reasons, he finally fell into such a bad position that he couldn't even recruit talents, and could only become a polished rod in his own territory. "You can rest assured that I will never covet your anything, but just borrow the treasure land for a little rest, and then leave." Jian Wushuang finished, motioned to let Qing Qing loosen the rope of strength on him. After the rope was untied, the things that were originally hidden in Wei Liujia's arms were scattered all over the place. Looking closely, they are all treasures of various sizes, with dozens of pieces, with various starbursts flashing, which is barely acceptable. The air froze, Wei Liujia's mouth twitched, and cold sweat poured from his temples. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. "Hurry up, I'll just wait for a little rest here, and it's not a robber who robs people of treasure." Wei Liujia echoed again and hurriedly put those treasures back into his arms. After he packed up the treasures, Jian Wushuang reminisced on the previous conversation, and soon realized what was happening, and he asked, "What did you say? You have to go to the confession every Chinese New Year. That is the confession, but is the second emperor the son correct?" Wei Liujia nodded his head. Jian Wushuang's and Shu's formlessly shortened the distance between them, plus the almost repair came to Dagu Mountain to visit, so that he had no one to tell, so he opened the conversation box unconsciously. "Yes, I have to go to Tiangong to make confession every Chinese New Year." Jian Wushuang heard his heart and moved his heart. After glancing at I Ching, he asked again, "Did the confession of this year's Chinese year begin or not?" "Not yet." Wei Liujia shook his head. Every Chinese New Year's confession was started after the second emperor attended the heavenly feast. Somehow this year's Korean confession was delayed somehow, but it will start in another 3 years. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up, which was simply dozing off, and immediately put on the pillow. Originally, He was still having a headache how to approach the young man to correct it. Now the problem was solved immediately. As the saying goes, the thin camel is bigger than the horse. Even though Wei Liujia was crowded out by the rest of the mountain owners, he was also able to go straight to the Tiangong Palace and meet the master. Only this one is what Zhen Wushuang urgently needs. If you go to Tiangong with him to get close to Gongzisheng, you will have a fairly well-known and undetectable identity. As long as that Yinling is beside Gongzisheng or nearby, she will surely be able to find her whereabout. Thinking of this, Zhen Wushuang said, "If we want to go to the Tiangong with you and see the young man to correct it, can we?" Wei Liujia was stunned, and soon turned his face. "I'm afraid it's not very good. The Tiangong is heavily guarded. Everyone who goes to the tribute will be thoroughly investigated, in case." He didn't say the second half of the sentence, but Zhen Wushuang knew what he was thinking. If you take them to the Tiangong, if there are any consequences and problems, they will definitely not be able to bear him. As Zhen Wushuang prepared to continue to persuade him, Zhao Ting, who had not spoken in the distance, slowly walked forward. Wei Liujia looked up subconsciously, and suddenly he shuddered, and stood up straight to salute Zhao Ting. Wei Liujia, the lord of the lonely Dagu Mountain, saw and met Zhao Tianguan. "Do you recognize me?" Zhao Ting came to him and asked quietly. "When, of course, you are the Tianguan next to the second emperor, and the low office must be kept in mind," Wei Liujia said aloud. Zhao Ting nodded and said, "I also recognize you, and I am most impressed, and I can still remember it now." His eyes lit up. Chengmeng Zhao Tianguan remembered the humble office. "Of course remember, you are the most unique of the 17 mountain owners." Zhao Ting smiled slightly. "Ahaha, is that?" Wei Liujia looked embarrassed, and naturally understood the meaning of Zhao Ting's words. Every time during this Chinese New Year, the confession made him look so different every time that he would not come to Taiwan. Of course it would be impressive. If there is no accident, this time the Tiangong dynasty confession will make his appearance. Zhao Ting naturally didn't know what he was thinking, and then said, "They are all my colleagues. Because I have something important to do, I can't go to Tiangong recently. Can you take them to Tiangong to make confessions?" Although Zhao Ting is asking, his tone is not to be discussed. Although her words were full of loopholes, but Wei Liujia did not dare to disobey her and had to resign, go back to Zhao Tianguan, the master of Dagu Mountain Wei Weijia Can. Zhao Ting nodded, then looked at Zhen Wushuang. Zhen Wushuang returned her positive look, then stood up and walked to Wei Liujia. "Brother Wei, let's go to the confession. Can you prepare any gifts for the second emperor?" Wei Liujia heard the words, suddenly sweating again, and his face was very embarrassed. "Precise, the preparation is ready, but whether it can satisfy the second emperor is another. Can that make me take a look?" Zhen Wushuang smiled. Okay. He had a complex look, and slowly stretched his hands into his arms. After a while, some of the treasures he hid in his arms were picked out one after another, hovering carefully in the air. After seeing these treasures prepared for the second emperor, Zhen Wushuang finally believed, Wei Liujia, really poor. Chapter 48-28. Those that can be found even by ordinary top-level cultivation, and disdain for the practice of Tao, there are as many as 4 copies, and occupy 40% of these treasures. There are 13 treasures in his collection, each of which can only be said to be terrible. Apart from the Taoist book, there are some treasures that cannot be named. However, Wei Liujia is still a family of treasures, and he introduced them to Zhen Wushuang one by one. This is Yushu Liuli Zun, Luangjinyu Ring. 13 treasures that can be seen slightly, but only that one Yushu Liuli Zun is of some value, can warm the meridians, and has a better use for restoring the strength. But Rao is so. I am afraid that the effect of Yushu Liuli Zun is not as good as a black mountain top crystal. Wei Liujia wiped the virtual sweat on his head. These are all the babies I bought from the real sword that my father left me. I hope the confession will not be ugly this time. Zhen Wushuang already had no idea what to say. If these things, which were barely treasured, were brought to the Tiangong Palace and in front of the 2 emperors, then the mockery and humiliation of Wei Liujia would be inevitable. Thinking of this, he looked at Wei Liujia, and when he turned his palm, a small wooden box appeared and handed it over. "You and I are destined, I will give you some gadgets today." Despite Wei Lujia's doubts, he still reached out and took the small Shimu box he had delivered. At the next moment, he gently opened the box body, and thousands of soft white awns escaped from the box, with a strong and extremely medicinal fragrance, illuminating the entire small cave for a moment. Gutter! A clear swallowing sound rang through everyone's ears. Wei Lujia's eyes were straight, and he looked straight at the pill in the small box of Shimu in his hand. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, and his reaction seemed to have been expected. This kind of pill was taken by the 3 people of spring and autumn from the heaven of the 6 crow emperors. It was collected by the emperor and belongs to the top treasure. Even the ordinary Dian immortal may not be able to take a look. Each one is a world of luck. Right now this Emperor Zhongdan pill has a magical effect on solid foundations and perception of immortality. Even Jian Wushuang is particularly fond of this immortality. In the end, Wei Liujia reluctantly withdrew his gaze, then closed the box and shook his head. "The value of this kind of pill is too expensive. I am afraid I can sell all of my Degu mountain, and I can never buy it. I can't close." Jian Wushuang Wenyang smiled slightly. "Accept it. Don't you want to use this pill to make a good face when you go to the Tiangong this year?" His sentence directly poked the deepest pain in Wei Lujia's heart, reminding him of all the humiliations since taking over as the mountain owner. For a time, the palm of his hand stretched out, and he held the box tightly again, and his joints were pale. "Miss you. Just think about it, take the opportunity to grasp it." Jian Wushuang smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "Then we will go to Tiangong 3 years later." For 3 years, for Yang Xian, it was just a snap. Within these 3 years, Jian Wushuang, Di Qing and others did not leave the small cave in the big lonely mountain in one step. They were all rearing and adjusting their strength to the peak. There is only one Yang Xian who has not closed his eyes for a moment in 3 years. That Yang Xian is Wei Liujia. For 3 years, I kept the box gifted to him by Jian Wushuang, and was even careful to open it. I was afraid that it would suffer some kind of loss. Looking at Wei Liujia, who was almost going crazy, Jian Wushuang could not see it, and gave him 4 Dezang Danmaru with the same grade but different utility. Therefore, Wei Liujia almost passed out with excitement, and the first thing after he was awake was to bow his head, but was stopped by Jian Wushuang. After a simple entrustment, he restrained his leaping fairy source. 3 years have passed, and a distinctive morning bell and drum sound resounded from the sky corner. In the small cave of Degu Mountain, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. "Sir, we should start our journey." Wei Liujia seemed to have been waiting for a long time, and his uncontrollable joy appeared on his face. Jian Wushuang nodded, then stood up, and Di Qing followed him step by step. The candidates for this trip to Tiangong to meet Gongzi Jiao have already been determined. Only Jian Wushuang and Tai Qing, and Wei Liujia are the 3. As for Jian Ting's decision, Zhao Ting didn't let her follow her, but stayed with Shiqing Pond in the cave of Degu Mountain. This decision is made, on the one hand, because more people are more likely to be exposed in the Celestial Palace corrected by the sun, on the other hand, because Jian Wushuang does not believe her. How can it be a simple Yang Xian if he can correct the position of Tianzi and be sent to assassinate him? "Adult, can Qing Kai go with you?" Shi Qing Kai said nervously, rubbing his clothes corner nervously. Jian Wushuang glanced back at her. "Relax, I will come back to pick you up and take you home after I finish my work." At this point, the 3 bodies left the sky and turned into 3 streamers and flew away. While rising directly into the clouds, Jian Wushuang also noticed that at the same time, there was a strong breath from all the heavens, and he flew towards the same place. That was the most central part of the entire Damien, and it was the Palace of the Sun. As a mountain host different from Tianyu, its status is quite high in Domitian. Each mountain host is the lowest in Yangxian realm, which is equivalent to the final card of the sun. In other words, even if Wei Liujia became poor again, he would have a thin face in front of his son. 17 fairy mountains, 17 mountain owners, are the closest to the Temple of Heaven except the Lord of the Blessed Land. There are 17 lords of the mountain, and there are only 6 lords of the Blessed Land. Their status is more detached. It is a title that can only be obtained by Yangxian, who has made a great contribution to the prince. It is also hereditary. Within half a day, Zhen Wushuang and others came to the heavenly palace at the center of Damientian. On the occasion of the vastness of the clouds, an imposing heavenly gate sits amidst the clouds and stands majestic. At this moment, there are no fewer than hundreds of figures like the sun and stars, falling outside the heavenly palace. Surrounded by their respective subordinates, dozens of palatial physiques marched forward. As soon as Wei Liujia saw them, he was unconsciously short, and wanted to avoid them. But the more he hid, the more he was discovered. Among the more than 10 Daohua noble figures, the middle-aged Yang Xian, the richest man, could see Wei Liujia at a glance. Yo, it turned out to be Wei Xiandi. It didn't happen in 1 year. It seems that there was some chance. The rich state Yangxian dragged his tone and walked over with a character. Despite the possession of the Emperor Zhengdan pills given to him by Zhen Wushuang, Wei Liujia still consciously dwarfs and looks reddish. Chapter 48-29. That rich state Yangxian is obviously also one of the owners of the 17 mountains. A pair of small eyes shining with fine light kept looking at his clothes, and he said the previous words. The clothing worn by Wei Liujia at the moment was also given to him by Zhen Wushuang. This pair of lacy mountain-studded long dresses was given to Zhen Wushuang by the young emperor and emperor. Each silk thread cost countless embroidered empresses, and was also a rare treasure. He was handed over to Wei Liujia. Fu State Yangxian also saw the extraordinary clothes on his body, his eyes dripping. Wei Xiandi, why are the real swords that you often wear around you missing? Wouldn't it be for the sake of buying this outfit, and sell it? As his voice fell, more than a dozen other Dao Gui figures laughed and were very lively. Wei Liujia's complexion turned red and he had to rush forward to theory. But Zhen Wushuang beside him pulled him, and his voice was imperceptible, and Neng barking at the dog. Boy, what are you saying? Zhen Wushuang's voice was not deliberately hidden, and it naturally passed into his ears, making Fu Yangxian's face change. Wei Liujia was inexplicably reassured, and his state of mind also changed unconsciously. Facing the rich state Yangxian who rushed over, he went up without fear. Wei Liujia, get away from this seat, I'm going to destroy the kid's origin. Fu State Yangxian said angrily. Wei Liujia heard the words and slowly raised the corner of his mouth. Ding Chunshan, has Laotsu always been too kind, so that you have been riding on Laotsu's head and shit? Don't forget that Laotsu is also a mountain owner. Rich State Yangxian froze down, looking at Wei Liujia, who could not believe it, changed the aura. There was a moment of silence outside the Tiangong. A good mountain owner, said Fu Yangyang, who responded with a sneer. How dare you have done a great contribution for you, the mountain owner, for the entire Dmitri. I'm afraid I can't even afford the confession from the DPRK's position. Do you care how much I have contributed? Even if Lousy lay down and sleeps every day, that is the mountain owner, Wei Liujia also sneered. How do I take off my shoes and rub my legs? As long as you can press me, let alone rub your legs for your slippers, even if you lick the soles of this seat. Fu State Yangxian coldly said, if you are not good for me, then please remove the mountain automatically. How about the position of the Lord and running 3 circles around the Tiangong with bare ass? Laro should answer. Glancing at him, Wei Liujia turned and strode into the heavenly palace. After eating a boring loss, Fu Shen Yangxian, who knew that his face was lost, wanted to take him away. Wei Liujia, wait for this seat. In the vast cloud ladder, Wei Liujia's face flushed with excitement. His mother, I have never been as happy as I am today. The burdenness I have experienced before, I have returned it together today. It turned out to be so happy. After he finished speaking, looking at Zhen Wushuang sincerely, today I was able to raise my eyebrows and exhale completely, but also thanks to the blessing of the adult, Weimo thanked me here. Zhen Wushuang smiled slightly. In fact, even without the details I gave you, you can still raise your eyebrows. You have always been stuck in your own opinion, but you never know how to deal with that kind of person is to return it ruthlessly. It is far less than the spirit and the spirit to crush him materially. Zhen Wushuang said this calmly, and then stopped talking. And Wei Liujia was also pondering the meaning of his words, and awed him for a while. The ladder of 9,990, until the last step, the magnificent gate of the heavenly palace appeared. The magnificent celestial palace in which the sun is located is full of majestic feelings. Compared with the heavenly palace in the northern celestial state of the late emperor's son, it is a little less tricky and ingenious. It was a bit majestic. This gave Jian Wushuang a bit of an illusion, and the correction of the sun was the real little emperor. The confession that is opened every other Chinese New Year is a law rectified by the sun after the Feast of the Heaven, which is intended to secure the mountain owner and the lord of the blessed land in order to prevent a second heart. The gate of the Tiangong Palace has long been opened, and a scent of incense floats out of the temple, calming the hearers. Guarded guards walked out of the hall and led them in sequence. In order to highlight the facade and style, every mountain owner who came to the Tiangong was followed by 5 or 6 top repair subordinates. Each of them was surrounded by a huge box, which was obviously a gift for the confession. Especially the wealthy Yangxian who confronted Wei Liujia outside the Tiangong Palace, followed by 8 top-repaired subordinates, and the number of boxes in his arms was roughly 20 pieces. Instead, Wei Liujia was very bachelor, holding a slap-sized Yushu Liulizun seated. This scene was taken into account by Fu Yang Yangxian, and he almost laughed out loud. He, who read countless treasures, naturally could see the Yushu Liulizun in Wei Liujia's hand at a glance, and even his body was not as good as the one he wore. I'm going to see how you compete with this seat. Just wait for 3 rounds of Rao Tiangong with bare ass. Fu State Yangxian glared at him fiercely, and then took a seat. As long as these mountain masters entered the temple, Jian Wushuang realized that he was seated in the lower position of the throne, and he had already settled 6 old men, all of whom were quite mature, and they should be the masters of the blessed land. Sitting next to Wei Liujia, Jian Wushuang's eyes were always watching the empty throne. He was expecting that the figure with the bone-shaped armor disappearing would appear in the next time. Master, are you waiting for the emergence of the second emperor? Seeing the fluctuations in Jian Wushuang's eyes, Wei Liujia lowered his voice. After the morning bell strikes 3 times, the second emperor will move from Sendai to Tiangong. Jian Wushuang nodded, waited intently. When it seemed as though the bells ringing from afar, the entire Tiangong was suddenly silent, and all the mountain owners were sitting in danger, even the lords of the blessed land that closed their eyes and kept their eyes open. There are fairy cranes chirping outside the hall, while thousands of fairy clouds rise. Under the guidance of hundreds of cranes, a negative hand stood, dressed in a suit of the emperor, slowly walking into the heavenly palace. At this moment, the lord of the 17 mountains, the lord of the 6 blessed lands, and a large number of Yangxian have been repaired, and they are all screaming. The courtiers meet the 2 emperor. Jian Wushuang looked up at his back. Compared with the previous feast in the heavenly court, the sun had a little more calmness that did not show the mountains and dew, as if everything was clear to the chest, giving people a sense of self-effacing. A feeling of, this is a very strong opponent, you can never guess his thoughts. Jian Wushuang doesn't even think that it was the real strength of the young master in the battle for the peach. Chapter 48:30. Wei Liujia's court tribute. The entire cave of Dagu Mountain was filled with an awkward atmosphere. Jian Wushuang looked at the extremely simple heavenly abode again. Except for a few tattered futon that were almost patched up, all the other feng shui and scenery were pure natural. Only then did he confirm that he was not lying and that it was really poor. It can't be. You are a Yang immortal and you are this poor? Jian Wushuang unconsciously added another blow. Wei Liujia was very hurt, and the expression on his face was almost embarrassed. Well, because I'm just a little Yang immortal and don't have much ability to accumulate wealth, I can only live on this Dagu mountain, which is why my life is so difficult. In addition, the prince has ordered that the mountain lords are not allowed to leave their respective areas of jurisdiction without permission, which is why they are so poor. I had previously asked for some precious spiritual treasure seeds from other Yang immortals. I was prepared to plant some, and when the Hua year was coming, I would bring the harvest to the court as tribute. However, my Dagu mountain is a land of evil. Nothing can grow here, only some ordinary things can grow here. Thus, after a few times, it became the situation you see now. At this point, Wei Liujia raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang nervously. My lords, you can see that I'm really poor. Even if I strip off my clothes, I won't be able to squeeze out any treasure. Please show mercy. Jian Wushuang finally understood that the young Yang immortal named Wei Liujia had inherited his father's position and received the title of Mountain Lord. However, due to his bad luck and various other reasons, he was so down and out that he could not even recruit talents. He could only stay in his own territory. Don't worry, we won't covet anything of yours. We'll only be borrowing this treasured land for a short rest before leaving. After Jian Wushuang finished speaking, he motioned Di Qing to release the rope on his body. When the rope was untied, the things that Wei Liujia had hidden in his arms were scattered all over the ground. Upon closer inspection, they were all treasures of various sizes. There were dozens of them, and they were shimmering with all sorts of treasure lights. They could barely be considered decent. The air froze. The corners of Wei Liujia's mouth twitched, and cold sweat seeped out of his temples. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "Put it away quickly. We're just taking a short break here. We're not bandits who want to steal someone's treasure." "Yes, my lord." Wei Liujia responded and hurriedly stuffed the treasures back into his arms. While he was putting away the treasures, Jian Wushuang thought back to the previous conversation and quickly realized something. He asked, "You just said that you have to go to the court every year. You go to the court to see the second emperor, Prince Ju?" Wei Liujia nodded. Jian Wushuang's warmth had unknowingly closed the distance between them. In addition, there were almost no top cultivators who came to visit Dagu Mountain on normal days, so he had no one to talk to. Thus, he unconsciously opened his mouth and said, "Yes, I have to go to the Heavenly Palace to offer an official tribute every 1 year." Jian Wushuang was moved by his words. After exchanging a glance with Di Qing, he asked again, "Then, has the offering ceremony for this year begun or not?" "Not yet." Wei Liujia shook his head and said, "Every year's tribute starts after the second prince returns from the Heavenly Court's feast. For some reason, the current year's tribute has been delayed for some time, but it will start in 3 years." Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened. This was simply great timing. Originally, he was still having a headache over how to get close to Prince Ju. Now, this problem was immediately solved. As the saying goes, a lean camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if Wei Liujia was ostracized by the other mountain lords, he was still able to go straight to the Heavenly Palace and meet Prince Ju. This was what Jian Wushuang urgently needed. If he went to the Heavenly Palace with him to get close to Prince Ju, he would have a rather legitimate and undetectable identity. As long as Yinling was by Prince Jaya's side or nearby, he would definitely be able to find her whereabout. At the thought of this, Jian Wushuang said, "If we want to go to the Heavenly Palace with you and meet Prince Ju, can we?" Wei Liujia was stunned, but his expression quickly changed. "I'm afraid that's not a good idea. The Heavenly Palace is heavily guarded, and every person who goes to pay tribute will be thoroughly investigated." What if? He did not say the second half of his sentence, but Jian Wushuang knew what he was thinking. If he took them to the Heavenly Palace, the consequences and problems that would arise would definitely not be something that a little Yang immortal like him could bear. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to persuade him again, Zhao Ting, who had been silent all this while, slowly walked forward. Wei Liujia subconsciously raised his head to look, and his entire body trembled at the sight. He hurriedly stood up straight and cupped his hands in salute to Zhao Ting. "Your humble servant, Wei Liujia, the Mountain Lord of Dagu Mountain, greets Heavenly Official Zhao. You recognize me?" Zhao Ting came in front of him and asked indifferently. "Oh, of course, you're the Heavenly Official serving the second prince. I'll definitely remember that," Wei Liujia said, embarrassed. Zhao Ting nodded and said, "I also know you, and you're the one who left the deepest impression. I can still remember you even now." His eyes brightened. "Thank you, Heavenly Official Zhao, for remembering my position." "Of course I remember. You are the most unique individual among the 17 mountain lords," Zhao Ting said with a smile. "Ahaha. Is that so?" Wei Liujia's expression turned awkward, and he naturally understood what Zhao Ting meant. This once-in-year court tribute had made him embarrassed every time, so of course he would leave a deep impression. If there were no accidents, he would make a fool of himself again in the heavenly palace. Zhao Ting naturally did not know what he was thinking. She continued, "They are all my colleagues. I have important matters to attend to, so I can't go to the heavenly palace. Can you take them to the heavenly palace to pay their respects?" Although Zhao Ting was asking, her tone did not allow any room for discussion. Although her words were full of loopholes, Wei Liujia did not dare to disobey. He cupped his hands and said, replying to heavenly official Zhao, "The mountain lord of the Dagu mountain, Wei Liujia, will obey your orders." Zhao Ting nodded and then looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang gave her an affirmative look and then walked toward Wei Liujia. "Brother Wei, did you prepare any gifts for the second prince?" When Wei Liujia heard this, he immediately broke out in cold sweat again. His expression was extremely uneasy. "Yes, I have prepared, but whether it will satisfy the second prince is another matter. Then can I have a look?" Jian Wushuang smiled. All right. He had a complicated expression on his face as he slowly reached into his arms. A moment later, some of the treasures he had hidden in his arms were taken out one by one and carefully suspended in the air. When he saw the treasures that were prepared for the second prince, Jian Wushuang finally believed that Wei Liujia was really poor. Chapter 48-31. There are hundreds of eyes staring at Zhen Wuyang's celestial heavenly court. Judging by the performance of the sun, it is definitely not his last strength. Including finally being suppressed by Jian Wushuang, he definitely has several ways to get out of trouble, but in the end why it will be a defeated situation, Jian Wushuang guesses that the means of correction by the sun may not be displayed. After all, judging from the fairy style he released in that contest, it was very cloudy and fierce. Jian Wushuang put him in the ranks of dangerous people, and naturally would never start a conflict with him. The scene of the killing of the son of the goddess in the northern celestial state was absolutely impossible to be staged in Dami. The figure sits on the throne, the sun nodded slowly, and looked across every Yangxian in the heavenly palace. On his side, accompanied by a white-robed Yangxian who was not angry, Zhu Qing are seated one by one. The sun waved his hand and smiled, "We haven't seen it for a year, and we will meet for 3 years. Zhu Qing, please drink 300 cup. My son manages enough." At the end of the talk, laughter sounded in this palace, and the atmosphere was at its best. In the face of these immortal mountain masters and lords of the blessed land, Gongzisheng did not show his identity, but pulled his status down, giving people a sense of equalization. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't find any flaws in this conversation, and naturally there was no discomfort. Immediately afterwards, the sommelier boy presented a bottle of exquisite wine. Although it seemed to be a small bottle, it contained more than 1,000 pounds of liquor. After picking up the wine, Wei Liujia very naturally poured a cup for Jian Wushuang, and then the Qing, and finally poured himself a cup. He was a little shocked by the small details that could not be seen. Although Wei Liujia is unbearable, it is also the owner of Xianshan Mountain, and his character is the hard smelly stone in the pit. At the same time he is poor, he is also a hard smelly stubborn donkey. And those two guys who can make him drink, aren't his followers? Is it a rescue soldier who moved in? Thinking of the abnormal Wei Liujia outside the previous Qiangong temple, Ding Chunshan suddenly lost his confidence. Is there really any treasure hidden in that guy's hands? Ding Chunshan murmured secretly, but quickly calmed down again. Even if there is any baby in Wei Liujia's hand, is there no baby in his hand? Not only there are but also the quantity and quality far exceeding each previous confession. For this Chinese New Year confession, Ding Chunshan almost brought all his family's identity, only to make a good impression in front of the sun. The reason why all the people brought over were desperate, Ding Chunshan still had a hidden meaning that was not revealed. This year's Chinese New Year confession is later than the previous one. This is the first time, there is no precedent, and he is well informed that the 5 brothers of the sun's correction have some minor conditions, which leads to the state of martial law in each heaven. Therefore, Ding Chunshan boldly speculated that the 2 emperors and sons might be able to lower the luck of Fudi and Fuse at this juncture to strengthen the stability of Domitian. 17 Xianshan mountain lords and 6 blessed landlords, plainly speaking, are the right-hand bodyguards of the sun. Only when the fortune of Fukuzawa's luck drops again will they have common benefits for them. Whether you can be promoted from the position of Xianshan mountain lord to the lord of blessed land depends on this opportunity. So this time, Ding Chunshan must take the lead. He lifted his head and drained the wine from the glass, then he looked around with pride in his eyes. Jian Wushuang, who was sitting on the side, frowned slightly, and the wine in the glass remained unchanged. The wine had gone through the third tour, and Yinling still did not appear in the tiangong, which made him unable to sit still, and began to think about getting out, and took the opportunity to explore around the tiangong. Just as he was thinking about how to get out, the atmosphere in this palace began to change subtly. All the followers behind the master of Xianshan Mountain began to sort out the boxes. Although the mountain masters were still drinking, they seemed to have been working hard in the dark. The most treasured treasures bred by the young son Jiao Ayutiandi, and the young man Morshi male color in this large division, are almost known to Yang Xian, who is a little herd. This also gave birth to the scene of presenting treasures. Every master of Xianshan Mountain and even the master of the Blessed Land began to present their own treasures. The first to present treasure was a lord of the Blessed Land sitting at the head of the younger son. He got up and took out a black and white wishful wish from his arms. Your Highness, this thing is called to avoid the wishful thinking. It was cast by Shu Tuor, a 3-inch mountain master Shu Tuor, and contains 2 extremely rich first-day weather luck, which is a rare treasure. This thing has black and white 2-color bone buds. Just twist the black bone buds to avoid evil spirits and clean the spirit platform. If you press and hold the white bone buds, you can absorb most of the delirium and blood. The 2-color rui, which was first thrown by the elder lord of the Blessed Land, is still valuable. If this object is worn on the body, it can avoid some of the special immortals that practice the Falun Dafa. The son sitting on the head nodded his head and gestured, without showing any expression. After the elder lord of the Blessed Land will evade Rui and give it to the boy, he will be seated again. Since then, the devotion of the treasures has begun. This is an invisible battle without smoke. The endless stream of rare and precious treasures emerged first, and the quality was extremely high, and some treasures made Jian Wushuang all interested. As long as the immortal source does not die, it will instantly shape the dove-shaped immortal grass of the peak fairy body. There is a sacred gourd that easily kills Yangxian and only needs a drop of essence blood. There is even a real sword made of sky-hanging wood with a strong life. Tianchuimu is a fairy tree that grows only when Emperor Qiyun blesses. Without Emperor Qiyun, it will wither and die, and it is an indispensable thing for the construction of heaven. A true sword made of tenchu wood with a strong breath of life and no signs of withering and death. This is unprecedented. It is no longer possible to measure the value of it with treasures. Such a real sword has become the most dazzling existence. Even the treasures of countless suns and corrections are extremely favored by this true sword. It is the 13th fairy mountain lord who presented the true sword of the wood in this day. This time he only brought such a treasure, but it has become a force to suppress the crowd. According to what he said, this day the true wooden sword was discovered by him from an ancient battlefield that was left behind. It is very likely that it was a former emperor who cast it with supreme luck and gave it. Saber for the Delichen. Ding Chunshan, who was sitting at the same place, was also somewhat unsteady at this time. He could clearly feel that this offering is not comparable to the offerings in the past years, regardless of quality or quantity. Chapter 48-32. This time the quality of the treasure is too high. There is Duhexianxian grass in the front and Tianmumu sword in the back. Ding Chunshan gritted his teeth and secretly said, "Let me see how many treasures you can have." However, in a half-day effort, dozens of treasures appeared like flowing water. When it was Ding Chunshan's turn, he proudly stood up and took a few steps, turning his palms between the two, and 2 slowly turning black beads appeared. His Royal Highness, this thing is called the Zi bead, which is divided into thundercloud double beads. Lei Yizhu has the power of casting, and Yunzhu has the power of destruction. One casting is a small heaven, and one destruction is also a small heaven. When Ding Chunshan's Ding Tianzhu came out, all Xianshan mountain owners whispered. It is already amazing to be able to seal two extreme forces in tiny pearls, and the prestige is equally good. The youngest son who sat at the top of the head also rarely spoke, not bad. Ding Chunshan heard the words, and he quickly bowed his hand with joy. His Highness can like it is a blessing for me, Ding Chunshan. The other Xianshanshan masters said that they all pointed their lips away without traces. In terms of flattery, this product is definitely a good hand, and no one can control it. After handing the Ding Zi to the boy, Ding Chunshan only felt comfortable and looked at everyone a bit. Then it was Wei Lujia's turn to confess, and the atmosphere in the entire Tiangong suddenly became a little cheerful. There was also a smile in Gong Zizheng's eyes. He was also very impressed with Wei Liujia, the Lord of the Lonely Mountain. Every time the confessions wore a plain robe, they looked very poor. Treasures are naturally like spreading goods, not even treasures. However, the son did not care about these things. With his father Shong Yuan, Wei Liujia was still eligible to go to this heavenly palace and become a party of the Xianshan mountain. After all, his father was once known as Wei Jun, the of war. Slowly spit out a breath, Wei Liujia and Zhen Wushuang looked at each other, and then took the Yushu Lulazan forward. His Royal Highness, this is what Wei Liujia presented, named Yushu Liulizan, which has the function of nourishing meridians and restoring vitality. It is a treasure. As soon as this remark came out, the entire Tiangong laughed completely, and even the white robe Yangxian who was behind his son's corrections disdain. The most fiercely smiling Ding Chunshan said arbitrarily, it seems that this time it was his second highness who lost money. He hosted a banquet, but he ended up with a broken one. It seems that it is time to mention the qualifications of the Tiangong. The sword sitting on the side was unpleasant. If it were not in this heavenly palace, just by the noisy voice, he would like to unscrew Ding Chunshan's head. Young master corrected his face calmly, and smiled slightly. Okay, I have received your thoughts, sit back. Wei Liujia promised, and solemnly handed over the Yushu Liulizan to lead the boy, and then walked out of his arms to find a slap-sized exquisite hinoki small box. His Royal Highness, Wei Liujia also has a pill. There was silence in the Temple of Heaven, and all the mountain owners stretched their necks and waited to see what else he could look like. Gongzi Jiao also came to interest, and he helped his chin open and see. Wei Liujia nodded, then reached out and gently opened the box. Immediately, thousands of strands of colorful huamang burst out, and the medicinal fragrance that was so thick that it could not be turned into a scroll was like a picture scroll, and it instantly covered the entire Tiangong. The original self-formed prince corrected, sitting straight for a moment, staring straight at the things in the box. All the mountain owners, together with the Lord of the Blessed Land, straightened up involuntarily, and wanted to see exactly what the pill was, so that such a vision would burst out. Ding Chunshan's fat face was so nervous that he smelled something unusual. This pill, what's the role? The inquirer Shen Sheng asked. Back to your highness, you can let Ruyan Dingxiu produce a fairy root. Just a few crosses, like a thunder, completely exploded in this heavenly palace. The effect is fierce, far more than 10 times the true sword cast by the wooden tree that day. Even the calm-minded younger man could not help but take a deep breath. Is this serious? Your Highness Mingzhen, Wei Liujia said, and then handed over the shomu box containing Danmaru to lead the boy. The young man quickly ingested it into his hands and looked at the dark golden pill with a colorful rainbow in the box. He raised his head a moment later and solemnly said, Liujia, what reward do you want? There was a riot in the entire Tiangong Palace again, which was never seen in the confessions of the Chinese government in the past few years, and the son Jiao Ku never said the word reward, but it is a precedent now. Wei Liujia then slowly shook his head. I don't want anything, it is to repay the debts of the previous years. The son opened his mouth, but he wanted to reward him but he didn't know why. The appearance of this pill means that a Yangxian can be directly cultivated. A Yangxian is the strategic foundation. Equivalently, Wei Liujia sent him a Yangxian in disguise. The importance is self-evident. Ding Chunshan had a fat face, and he suppressed the uneasiness in his heart. He stood up and came to the side of Wei Liujia, arching his hand. His Royal Highness, the courtiers, and treasures are to be presented. After that, he reached over again and gave a bronze bell. Your Highness, this thing is called a 9-turn dry bell. Each turn is a sound, a total of 9 turns. A turn is better than a turn, just a flick of a turn. There will be a breathtaking, calm power, even if it's impossible for Yangxian to escape. After he finished speaking, all Xianshan mountain lords nodded secretly. This 9-turn dry bell is indeed the best among the treasures. It is indeed terrifying to be able to persuade Yangxian, but it is still slightly inferior to the pill offered by Wei Liujia. It seems to be extremely resentful. Ding Chunshan looked at him with a sneer. His eyes seemed to signal that there are still many treasures in this seat that were not taken out. How do you compare it? However, Wei Liujia just glanced at him sideways. You read books. Ukanshu. Com reached into his arms, this time directly pulled out 2 small boxes of clover. The air fell into a suffocating atmosphere, and even the sun's corrections couldn't calm down. His Royal Highness, these 2 Japindan pills are equivalent to the one of Fengcai, which can make the ordinary enter into Yangding cultivation and give birth to fairy roots. The Tiangong was completely boiling, and all the mountain owners got up and looked at Wei Lujia's hands in disbelief. The horizontal flesh on Ding Chunshan's face trembled fiercely, and his figure unconsciously stepped back half a step. The sun's palm pressed firmly on the throne has been quietly clenched, and his eyes shoot out the fine man's. Immediately, Wei Liujia looked at Ding Chunshan, who was stunned, and smiled lightly. Ding Shan Lord may still have treasures to offer. I'm in a hurry, I can't wait to give away the remaining treasures. Show off wealth, show off naked. All the mountain owners, the lords of the blessed land, looked at him in disbelief. This great mountain lord, who has made a foreign appearance in the treasures of several years, will use his own strength to defeat 6 mountain owners, 6 land owners. Chapter 48-33. 3 pills of pills, which can make the pills of Prussian cultivation produce the pill of Xianzhen, is beyond the scope of treasures. Not to mention that these Xianshan mountain masters, even as the son of the emperor, have never seen such a mysterious pill. One is a crushed existence, but at present, Wei Liujia has given 3 in one face. Naturally there is no mountain owner, and he can attack his front and frustrate his man. A total of 3 Japindan pills were put into the hands of Gongzi Jiao, which established Wei Lujia's unshakable position in one fell swoop. Wei Liujia smiled again. Master Ding Shan, but haven't the treasures ever been given? Ding Chunshan, who already knew the situation, had a fat white face, but he still gritted his teeth. I still have. Without saying a word, Wei Liujia took another box out of his arms. I will give another pill, which is the same as the 3 pill. The silence in the Tiangong Palace, with the face of Ding Chunshan as ash. 4 pieces of Japindan pill, that is, the archer gave 4 Yangxian. How can he play with his mother? When can Lian Yangxian be manufactured in batches? Yangxian is a great road, not a children's play. Owning a fairy route means that you have realized the road ahead. If you are in this way, the subsequent impact will be unpredictable. 4 Japindan pills completely defeated Ding Chunshan, or crushed it. The remaining 16 mountain owners and 6 lords of the blessed land consciously collected all the gifts they offered to avoid being disgraced. Looking at this scene, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. The 5 pills in Wei Lujia's hands were all screened by him, and they were all quite satisfactory, but they did help ordinary cultivators to produce immortal roots. The fairy position can only be said to be a character. Ding Chunshan felt the insurmountable horror for the first time. All the belongings he prepared were completely useless, and he was completely defeated. This year's confession of the Chinese New Year made Wei Liujia, who was supposed to be a foreigner, all the limelight. Taking a deep breath, the son whispered slowly, Liujia, let's say what I want, within my ability, everything can be given to you. Wei Liujia heard the words, smiled, and smiled extremely freely. His Royal Highness, Wei Liujia really has something he wants. What? I want Ding Chunshan to take off my shoes and press my feet. This rather joke sentence made the son stunned for a moment with the mountain owners, but he soon understood the meaning. Wei Liujia was paying back his teeth and reporting the troubles he had suffered in previous years. Every time, Ding Chunshan was in trouble, so he improvised a sword dance, which was quite embarrassing. Right now, it is time to fight back. Ding Chunshan was unbelievable, and then looked to the young man for help. The young man corrected his cough and waved his hand. Wei Liujia promised, and then looked at Ding Chunshan with a smile. This is a complete shame. Once done, he will endure ridicule among all the mountain owners. But he had to do it, and the son's correction had been acquiesced. Ding Chunshan's face was ashamed, his lips squatted down, and just before his hands were about to touch the boots, Wei Liujia stepped back, stared at him deeply, and returned to the original place. "I'm not going home yet," the son whispered, and scolded Ding Chunshan back. During this Chinese New Year confession, a total of 4 Japindan pills were harvested, and his mood was extremely good in an instant. Now the forces among the various emperors have already formed. Even if the vast division is vast, he wants to recruit 4 out of thin air. Wei Yangxian is also a very difficult thing. As far as Gongzijiao is concerned, these 4 pills have improved his strength. Thinking of this, he looked at the white robe Yangxian beside him. Bai Pao Yangxianshan was enlightened, but immediately bent down and whispered, "His Royal Highness, is it too sloppy?" "Not sloppy, let's announce it," the young man said lightly. Bai Pao Yangxian promised, and then walked a few steps, facing all Yangxian in the Tiangong Palace, announced the sound. "This is chartered by His Royal Highness, Wei Liujia, the owner of Dagu Mountain, made a great contribution to the mission." He declared that Wei Liujia was promoted to Shaoshitiangwan, and his seat Dagu Mountain was promoted to a blessed land, enjoying all the blessings of the Lord of the blessed land. It will take effect immediately. All the mountain owners and the Lord of the blessed land were shocked, and Wei Liujia also almost fell off the seat. Dagushan inexplicably became a blessed place, enjoying Few's luck, and he was promoted to Shaoshitiangwan. All this is just because of 4 Japindan pills. Everything came so fast that Wei Liujia felt like a dream. It was not until his knees that he returned to life that his mind gradually became clear. It was true to be a small heavenly official, and it was true to enjoy the luck of the Lord of Fudi. He looked back, and Jian Wushuang, who was still sitting there, smiled slightly at him. Wei Liujia has never been stunned at this moment. If he hadn't watched so many Yangxian, he would have to go directly to Jian Wushuang. After the confession of the dynasty, the 17 Xianshan mountain lords became 16 and the 6 blessed landlords became 7. After the banquet until the end, Jian Wushuang did not see Yin Ling's figure, which made him anxious. After the banquet for the DPRK was completely over, he no longer wanted to stay longer, and he directly took ditching to explore around the Tiangong. "Sir, can we see you again?" Outside the Temple of Heaven, Wei Liujia asked a little bit reluctantly among the clouds. Jian Wushuang turned around and said, "If you are destined, you will see you again. By the way, if you return to Dagu Mountain, take care of the 2 girls and don't let them walk around." Wei Liujia nodded vigorously, and solemnly arched his hand in front of his back. Everything seemed as if it were another world, but he knew that a brand new year was coming. After stepping out of Tiangong and saying goodbye to Jian Wushuang, Wei Liujia prepared to return to Dagu Mountain first to see the luck of Fudi. But as he was about to leave Tiangong, several Yangxian dressed in white robes came after him. "Wei Tianguan, Your Highness would like to ask you to go back and narrate." Wei Liujia jumped in his heart, but he didn't show anything on his face. After nodding, he returned to Tiangong. In the Hall of the Incense Curls, only Wei Liujia was at the moment. Gongzi sits face to face with him, and there is no other Yangxian besides that. "Liujia, how many years has your father Wei Jun gone?" After pouring a cup of tea for him, the son asked with a smile. "Back to His Royal Highness, I can't remember clearly. I want to have it for decades." Wei Liujia responded quietly. He nodded. "It's been almost that long. When I was a teenager, I was in front of the emperor in the heavenly court. I saw your father Wei Jun's heroic attitude. It was very photographic and worthy of being called the god of war." Wei Liujia arched his hand. "I take Father Xie His Highness to appreciate." The sun smiled and smiled. I don't lack anything, but I just missed something, the of war like Wei Jun. Chapter 48-34. Wei Liujia was sitting at the same place, and some did not understand what he meant. His father, Wei Jun, had already died in battle dozens of years ago, and Gongzi Jiao now talks about it. I am afraid that the words also contain other meanings. After a moment of contemplation, Wei Liujia looked up at him again. His Royal Highness, what does that mean? Young Master Xiaowen smiled and reached out and patted him on the shoulder. It doesn't mean anything. The of war Wei Jun is now unavailable, but if there is a substitute for him, I can't do without a competent Tianguan. Well, you go back and prepare first, and come to Tiangong to be a great official. Wei Liujia stunned and shook his head hurriedly. His Royal Highness, this is really too hasty. I am absolutely incapable. Just like the Jiao Ting before the young sun corrects, it is the great celestial officer. The so-called great celestial official, except for the youngest son correcting, can affect the entire great celestial, and has great power. The remarks at the moment were tantamount to thunder and burst into his mind. Gongzi Jiao smiled again, and then took a small box of shimu from his arms and placed it on the case between them. Liujia, this Japindan pill, is very precious to me, and I need them very much. Wei Liujia looked at him and already knew the meaning of the words. Without hesitation, he took out the last box of pill from his arms a moment later. His Royal Highness, this is my last box of pills. Unlike the first 4 boxes, its effect is to help Yangxian to perceive the fairy style and deepen it. In just one sentence, there have been some changes in the look of the youngster. To help Yangxian to perceive and deepen the immortal style, this means to completely open up the path of Yangxian's grandeur. This kind of effect can no longer be described by the sky, even the fairy peach obtained in the heavenly realm can't be compared. Converging with the fine man's in his eyes, the sun looked at him and asked, Liu Jiao, where did you find these pills? Going back to your highness, my father left, I found it in the cave of Dagu Mountain accidentally. Wei Liujia said without hesitation, there are only 5 remaining, all dedicated to his highness today. The young man stretched out his palm and took the last box of pill from his hand, closed the lid gently, then got up and turned his back to him. Don't lie to Liujia, these pills can't be left to you by Wei Jun. I have followed him since I was a boy. I know him best. I have never had any act of hiding in my life. My emperor did not like Dan Maru, and naturally he would not give it to Wei Jun this kind of Jipin Dan Wn, only the emperor will have. Speaking of which, the sun slowly bent over. Tell me, where did you find these pills, or who gave it to you? Wei Liujia did not expect this scene, but he quickly calmed down and arched his hand. His Royal Highness, indeed was left by his father. I said, it's impossible, Wei Jun can't leave these things. The sun chopped off the high-pitched cold voice. These pills must have been found by you from some place, or someone else gave it to you. His voice has softened a lot. Now as long as you tell me, the position of Tianguan is yours, and I will give you whatever you want. Taking a deep breath, Wei Liujia said, His Royal Highness, the ministerial sentence is true, there is no treasure, and no one is handed over to the minister. Gong's complexion gradually became cold. Really? It's not that I didn't say it, but I have already told your highness. Wei Liujia said in a nervous voice. Do you know the consequences of hiding without reporting? At this moment, Gong's face was completely cold. As his voice fell, more than 10 figures appeared in the empty sky palace. Everybody is full of Yang, all of them are Yangxian. They came and slowly surrounded Wei Liujia. This is the last chance. The sun said softly with his back to him. Unbelievable eyes appeared in his eyes, and finally returned from tension to calm. There is no treasure land, and no one is handed over to the minister. As Wei Liujia's sentence fell, a total of 12 Yangxian released the Yang Li chain at the same time, binding him. Push into heaven. The sun turned around and looked at him. Wei Liujia's figure was slightly startled, confused, and puzzled. I gave you the best things without reservation, why should I do this to me? Without waiting for an answer, he was caught and sent to heaven. Liujia, don't blame me. My power has been weakened to the extreme. If I don't want to do anything, I will always be in a passive situation. Among the clouds transformed from Yanli, there are Sendai. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing have already searched dozens of Sendai, and none of them have found any trace of silver bells. For a time, even Jian Wushuang began to doubt whether Yinling had left Da Mitian. Just as he was preparing to search again, more than 10 streamer-like figures passed through the clouds and galloped away into the distance. Why was that kid caught? Di Qing just glanced in that direction, and said softly. Jian Wushuang raised her brows. Wei Liujia? Shouldn't he be banned and returned to Degushan? The truth is clear, I'm afraid it's not that simple. The dozen or so Yangxian just betted him just now. Is it because of the things of Dan Maru? He jumped in his heart, and soon decided that the sun was correct because of those who had troubled Wei Liujia. But what made him far from thinking was that the sun's correction would tear his face so quickly. Don't care about those trivial things, instead of wasting too much energy, it's better to finish things soon and go back early. Di Qing advised. However, Jian Wushuang had his own decision. Wei Liujia was bound this time. If he didn't save, he would definitely die in the hands of the sun. And he has already roughly guessed that the reason why Yu reading books www.ukanshu.com will catch Wei Liujia is that he suspects that Dan Maru is not from his hand, but someone else. Now the doubt is just doubt, there is still time to control to rescue him within this time. Things start from him, and there must always be a solution. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang tilted his head toward the meaning, and then galloped along the team of Fang Cai. Di Qing also apparently guessed his intention, immediately shook his head helplessly, or followed. Among the dark black clouds, there was a thunder snake thick like a python rolling in it, emitting a terrifying trend. At the same time, one side of the was in it, and it was extremely extreme. In this vast heavenly hell, there are very few guards in charge of supervision, and only 3 top guards patrol. I don't know how long it has passed. A long wind blew into heaven's hell without attracting any attention. Chapter 48-35. Deep in heaven, it was extremely dim. A figure trapped by the Yanli chain hovered in one of the spaces. His thin fairy body was covered with scars at this moment, and the blood of God was dripping from every scar. The long hair was also scattered, covering his face. The sun's companion, the white-robe Yangxian, was holding a long whip that exudes muddy black. Every 10 breaths, he pulled out a whip and brought up a flesh. Even the fairy bodies shackled by the detached road cannot resist. Speak it out, the original rewards remain the same, and you can still succeed Tianguan. With such a rich blessing, why do you not accept it? Bai Pao Yangxian exhorted while waving his long whip. The blood of God kept falling, and the tortured figure slowly raised his head, revealing an eye through the scattered hair. Bai Pao Yangxian jumped suddenly in his heart, and then pumped harder after calming down. There was a ripple in the air, and the sun's correct figure slowly walked out. Speak it out, it will feel better. A dead sneer sounded. I'm so stupid. 5 pills, I didn't leave one, I don't have any ideas to give, but now it ends like this. I gave you the best things without reservation, why should I do this to me? Wei Liujia roared, and a pair of Mori cold-blooded eyes stared at the young man. Indiscriminate. Bai Pao Yangxian angered, and the long whip in his palm pulled directly to his cheek, leaving a narrow and long blood stain immediately. The blood poured out, but Wei Liujia didn't make any sound, just staring at him. The young man waved his hand to stop it, and when he was about to speak, the whole heavenly hell suddenly trembles, and then the powerful and extremely vigorous strength was agitated. His Royal Highness, heaven's hell has changed. Bai Pao Yangxian's complexion changed dramatically. As his words fell, a fierce explosion of martyrdom broke apart. The whole space was also shaken, and the invisible enchantment seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure, and then burst. All kinds of fierce and extreme force flooded in. With all kinds of unknown and terrifying dynamism flooding, an ugly Yangxian with 3 heads appeared. It was excited and seemed to have been trapped for a long time. Today, it just wants to devour all living things in front of it. It roared with excitement, but the 3 pairs of eyes only saw a few figures, and then burst. Gongzheng didn't even look at it, he reached out and squeezed its fairy source directly, smashing its fairy body. But this is just the beginning. At the next moment, an arm with a width of more than 10 feet was like a python, suddenly torn the space, and smashed it with unspeakable force. Yu Xianxian was a little slower, and was blasted out on the spot. The young man corrected his face and fought with him on the spot. Heavenly prison is breaking, countless trapped here. I do not know how many years of Yangxian have been released, and began to destroy to the maximum extent. Damn something. The sun shook his anger, and a river of blood appeared in the palm of his outstretched hand, directly smashing the arm that was more than 10 feet wide. Follow me to investigate, he said, then disappeared with a group of Yangxian. The celestial turmoil increased, and shortly after the sun corrected, 2 figures wrapped in black robes appeared quietly. Wei Liujia, follow us. The leading black robe whispered, reaching directly to destroy the Yanlian chain around him. Wei Liujia, who was about to faint, died, raised his head reluctantly, and after seeing who was coming, he was startled. Sir, don't talk, let us leave here. Jian Wushuang whispered. An unspeakable emotion came to mind, and Wei Liujia focused on it, but then he found that after suffering the death penalty, he had no strength in the meridian, and it was difficult to do the simplest action, let alone run. Sir, let's go, I'm not worth saving, he said. Seeing the reason, Jian Wushuang directly reached out and released several Yanli Huamangs to pull him, and then ran straight out of the prison. This chaos that became a pot of kanji was actually done by Jian Wushuang. He and I Ching directly destroyed most of the heavens and released those bound Yangxian, which caused chaos. And the fact is indeed as he thought, the sun's correction has been disengaged, there is no danger. He glanced at Wei Liujia like a bloodman behind him. Jian Wushuang sighed. This guy actually didn't confess a word about him to his son at the last moment. His heart was firm, and he was worth saving. But just as Jian Wushuang traveled through this chaotic and broken heavenly hell, there was a big crisis in my heart. At the next moment, a chaotic burst of chaos, dispelling the extremely dark mans came from the storm. Its speed is so fast that it cannot be imagined. However, at this dangerous time, Wei Liujia behind Jian Wushuang suddenly burst without warning, and directly greeted the big mang. It's just that with his fairy body, just for a moment, he was passed through the body, and the big man's cast was shot at Jian Wushuang. But it was precisely the moment Wei Liujia blocked that gave Jian Wushuang a chance. He turned around instantaneously, crushed down with one finger, and the Tianmen Jiu, who had not shown for a long time, exploded again with a huge amount of potential energy. When the two collided, the shock wave instantly cleared all chaos. A type of Tianmen Ji offset that big man's. Jian Wushuang did not stay back and pulled back Wei Liujia's broken and immortal body. And the figure of the younger son's correction appeared. He shot a fine manner in a pair of British eyes, staring straight at Jian Wushuang. He had a feeling that the middle-aged, unshaven man had a breath of familiarity. Jian Wushuang did not intend to clash with his son, so after he held Wei Liujia, he wanted to escape. But the dozens of Yangxian that appeared subsequently blocked their way. Yi Ching frowned, and he waved his hand directly. An indescribable force directly smashed the two Yangxian in front of him into a meatloaf. Yu reading books www.ukanshu.com go, he said in a deep voice, taking advantage of this empty talk, and reached out to shoot 2 of them directly. Yangxian fell in the hands of Di Ching, and even resistance could not be achieved, but he was killed in 6 moments. Jian Wushuang nodded, and did not hesitate, directly carrying Wei Liujia to take the lead. The sun who hovered in the void was completely shocked by the scene just now. The Yangxian is covered with a wave of hand. What kind of strength is it to be so freehand? Is it Dian immortal? There was a touch of Sen Han in the heart of Gongzheng, and at the same time there was a fierce color in his eyes. Even if it's Dian immortal, don't want to run wild in my big sky. At the same time that the entire sky of was completely destroyed, the sun's body shape was still standing in the distance. A palm-sized white jade object appeared in the palm of his hand. Chapter 48-36. The white jade object looks like a round mirror, The whole body is white in teeth, and is densely covered with complex fine lines, which looks strangely ancient. With the appearance of this round mirror-like object, the prisoners who had screamed in the heavens were all silent at this moment, and then fled like crazy. The young man corrected his face coldly, reaching for a mirror without any expression. Immediately, the breath of the surrounding void suddenly dropped to the freezing point, and a wicked evil that escaped from the cold escaped from the mirror. Immediately afterwards, there was a burst of silver bell-like laughter, and then the white mirror of the tooth suddenly reflected the head of a red-eyed baby boy. "Your Highness, long time no see." The young man tilted his eyes and looked at the weird baby in his hand mirror, then threw the mirror directly into the air. The stagnation of the void, like a quagmire, left all the prisoners who wanted to escape trapped in place, including Jian Wushuang and Di Qing. All felt a sense of unsteadiness. A ray of red light shone through hundreds of millions of miles, shining through a mirror hanging high in the air, making everything seem to be soaked in the sea of blood, strange and unspeakable. Sword Wushuang carrying Wei Liujia frowned slightly, and then looked at the side of Qing Qing quickly. "You took him away from this place, I will take care of it, and then meet at Dagu Mountain." Di Qing glanced at him again, and said with a lip, "Or do you take him away first? I won't be relieved when you break." Jian Wushuang did not quit anymore. After a 9-turn big Yangxian was in charge, how could it be more reliable than a Yangxian? Watching him move away, Di Qing withdrew his gaze and frowned slightly at the mirror that exuded a strange blood. "Pretend to be a ghost," he disdained, and waved a wave of strength directly. Bai Mangyan pierced the blood void, but when he was about to pierce the mirror, he didn't see any trace of it like a mud pool entering the sea. Then, a tender white arm like a lotus root suddenly came out of the mirror. With the emergence of this arm, a red-eyed and red-haired infant's head appeared. The baby was full of fangs and made a weird smile. The mirror hovering in the void is like a space, constantly exposing a body. And the Qing, who had never cared about it, frowned even more after seeing this scene, not because of tension, but disgust. I saw that the red-haired baby who had been drilled out of the mirror could no longer be described as weird. His predecessor was a pocket-sized baby boy with a dark red apron stretched around his waist, which looked normal. However, behind his head, there are hundreds of identical heads, hanging like the same bunch of grapes behind him. From a distance, it looks like a body with a centipede, very disgusting. Rao has seen the storms of all things, and has experienced the truth of many wars, but he can't help but frown. It's so disgusting, what can grow like this, surely not spliced. After releasing these ugly babies, the sun directly withdrew the mirror in the sky, and his figure was far away. At this moment, above the ruins of this heavenly prison, only Qing Qing and the ugly infant boy were in 2 forms. Jia. Food, powerful food. The countless heads behind the ugly babies were all staring at Qing Qing at this instant, and the saliva dripped unabashedly. "I advise you to get away, don't dirty your eyes," Di said coldly. "Otherwise, I will make you die." Ugly babies heard the words as if they heard jokes, and all opened their mouths together. "Who do you think you are? You can kill me. Even if you killed me once, I still have 99 lives. What can you do to me?" Di Qing didn't speak, and pointed out directly in front of him. A touch of extreme strength, like the same arrow shot out, instantaneously shattered the head that was still laughing. Absolute strength is here, even if you have 10,000 lives, this seat is still correct. Taking a head from behind and putting it on the neck, the ugly baby was completely angry. "Food. You it." At the end of the sentence, his lotus-like arms shuddered suddenly, the blood space with infinite pressure suddenly fell again, and even the void was crushed. But Qing Qing just disdainfully smiled. He lifted his palm and gave a direct shock. The blood space that was about to come down burst from the middle, which stirred up a rain. The ugly baby didn't wait without a hit, he screamed, and the hundreds of heads behind him, like grapes and centipedes, opened their mouths at the same time and spit out slap-sized blood-red bubbles. Obviously, Qing Qing didn't want to get entangled in this way anymore. Golden light began to flow in his eyes, and his palm had already condensed a full blow. When the tens of thousands of blood-red bubbles came, he released them with one blow. But a weird scene appeared. The unstoppable blow by Di Qing didn't destroy the bubbles, but instead made the bubbles adsorb on it and swallowed it crazy. Hee, it's delicious. The ugly baby boy's figure also skyrocketed at a rate visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the heads behind him also changed the shape of the queue, into a long snake shape, whirling around. Due to the previous warning of Jian Wushuang, he cannot use any highly recognizable fairy style in demission, so Diqing cannot release his golden and black treasures, and can only use the endless vigor of Yuanyuan to fight. Right now, this ugly baby is just the peak of Yangxian, but it gives Diqing a tricky feeling. The ordinary fairy style has no effect on him at all, and will be swallowed. Even if Yi Qing instantly shattered more than 10 heads, the ugly baby was not affected at all. Instead, he seems to be in a passive situation. Every head is madly eating away the diffusive forces scattered outside the body, and constantly growing itself. This makes Diqing very uncomfortable. Just when he was ready to release the treasure phase to crush directly regardless of it, a sword with a sharp edge to the extreme was cut. A total of more than 20 heads were directly chopped up completely, making Di Qing feel all light. Immediately afterwards, a mysterious figure surrounded by a large black robe came out into the air, holding an invisible sword in his hand. When Di Qing saw it, he raised his eyebrows. "Don't you go to send that guy back to Dagu Mountain? Why did you come back so quickly?" The bearded sword Wushuang shrugged. "I met an acquaintance halfway through. I threw him to the acquaintance and hurried over." Noble nodded, and with Jian Wushuang as a companion, he felt inexplicably calm. This big guy doesn't look like a single individual, it seems to be forcibly stuck together, very powerful. Jian Wushuang stepped forward and analyzed. "It doesn't matter what he is, it's finished." Di Qingsheng said in a deep voice. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.